Why most financial plans fail. So we have people coming to us, every day, contacting us about, trying to figure out what they should do with their financing. And a lot of times they don't know when or if they will ever be able to retire the way they want to retire. They don't know what to do to organize their finances or how to save taxes. And the funny thing is that a lot of these people have already had a financial plan of some sort created by somebody, a bank or a financial planner, or sometimes some calculator online, or some of them even have paid for it from a fee-for-service financial planner. And yet they still don't know when or if they'll be able to retire comfortably and what to do. And so why is it that so many of these financial plans fail? So we're going to talk today about why most financial plans fail. So first of all, how do we know? So this is what we're going to learn. How do we know that most financial plans fail? And what I mean by fail is they're not going to get you to the life that you want, or you don't have confidence that you're going to get there. Okay, so how do we know that? What exactly is a retirement plan? So, it's surprising how people don't know exactly what it should look like. So, common bad assumptions that are used in financial plans, not ours, but others. Why these bad assumptions are used. We're going to talk about generic plans versus custom plans, so you can see the difference. The importance of having confidence in your plan, why that makes a huge difference. We're going to talk about the one option plan problem, which is a fairly common problem, mostly among fee-for-service financial planners or fee-only financial planners. And then how an interactive financial plan gives you confidence. So, all right. So now, first of all, let's talk about the problems that we see with financial plans. Now, there's a variety of them, but these are the most common ones. First of all, a lot of them are just actually not a plan. They're actually, it's a piece of paper that says your, financial plan and your name on it. You open it up, and it's an investment projection. You're going to get to $1 million, or it's something really, really basic. So, I mean, just because it says financial plan on the cover doesn't mean it's a financial plan. A lot of times, they are actually just a sales pitch, is what they are. So they don't actually calculate your retirement goal and all that kind of stuff. So now, interestingly, is surveys say that 40% of Canadians, when they ask them, "Do you have a financial plan?" 40% of Canadians say they have a financial plan. And actually, a lot of people come to us. We ask them, "Do they have a financial plan?" A lot of them, like close to half, will say yes. And then as soon as we ask them any details about it, they don't know. Oh, you have a financial plan? That's good. So, like, when is it that you're going to retire? And what's your magic number that you need to have, your investments at the time to retire, and what do you have to do to get there? And they don't know the answer to any of those questions. So I said, well, if you don't know that, then you don't have a plan. Right? So now, most retirees have to spend much less after they retire, and we see that. So not our clients, but most people that are not our clients, after they retire, you see they cut back their lifestyle a lot. And that's mainly because at least in my opinion, it's mainly because they don't have the money. They don't know how much they can take out, and basically they don't have enough money, so they're kind of forced to. So they didn't save enough. Most people invest too conservatively to be able to retire comfortably, and I'm going to show you that. It's actually shocking how most financial planners that you go to, the first thing they'll do is put you in investments that are so conservative you can't possibly make your goal, and that's before they do the plan. It's crazy. So now we've actually had a fair number of people that they've told us, so they went to a fee-only financial planner, paid for a financial plan. They have the plan, and they still don't know what they should do. So it didn't give them the answers that they were looking for. So why does that? So we've seen all these cases happen. So why do these always keep happening? So what you're looking for is a real plan. Something so that you know what to do to have the life that you want. Okay, so first of all, what is a retirement plan? So retirement part is the biggest part of a financial plan. So let's talk about what actually is it. So here's just kind of an example. There's a few key pieces of it, and this is a simple plan, but just give you a picture of it. First of all, you should be able to. Now, this is not necessarily when you have to retire. It's when you have the option to retire. We call financial independence or financial freedom. You have the option to retire. At what age do you want to have the option to retire? So this plan is to be able to retire at age 60 on $100,000 a year before tax in today's dollars. You need to accumulate 4.7 million. So that's the amount that they need at retirement. So these are people it's a couple age 30. They want to retire at 60. They have 100,000 retirement investments now. So to achieve this goal, they would need to invest $1,500 a month to their RSPs, $1,000 a month to their TFSAs, invest all their tax refunds, and invest to get a long-term rate of return of about 8% a year before retirement and 7% after that. So I mean, you can debate all these numbers, but I'm just trying to give you the key parts of a financial plan. So the key parts are: when do you have the option to retire? What's the lifestyle that you want to have? What's your magic number, the portfolio, the nest egg you need at that time to retire? What are the steps you have to do between now and then to get there? And what's the rate of return your investments have to make, as a long-term average to get there? So those are the key pieces. You need all those key pieces, so that, in order to have a financial plan. And all of them, they have to be done with reasonable assumptions, and you have to have confidence that this is very likely to really happen. So that's what a real plan is. So now there's some bad assumptions that are often used in most financial plans that we see. Okay. And so these are the most common ones. So, and a bad assumption, what I mean, it's something that's unrealistic. It's unlikely to happen. So, when you make assumptions, you have to put some numbers in to be able to do your calculations, some projections, and they need to be something that you have confidence that it'll happen. So it's, you take you based on long-term average or expectancy, right? So one of them is, a lot of plans, the life expectancy is too short, and that's, life expectancy means when you expect to run out of money. So a lot of them just say arbitrarily that age 75 or 80 you're going to spend 25% less or something like that. Crazy. A lot of them use inflation numbers that are too low, or they give you the full OAS, is the old age security, the full amount. And I'll show you why that's not really realistic, or probably not. So now you may think unrealistic rates of return would be a common one. I think that used to be very common in financial plans, but I see a much less of it now. But it's somehow they're trying to make the plan work. So okay, so now let's talk about these unrealistic assumptions and why they're unrealistic. So first of all, life expectancy. So, a lot of plans, people, they go to, the life expectancy is at 85 or 90 or something like that. So we haven't even seen earlier than that. And it's, we had one woman that went to the bank and they asked, how long do you expect to live? And she was actually not feeling well that day, and she said 75. So they made her a plan where she runs out of money at 75. Well, that's crazy, because most likely she's going to live past that, right? So, and you know what? People often say, well, what happens if I need to spend money now? Because what if I don't live long? I might not live long. And my answer to that always is, if you die next year, then you have enough money. And if it doesn't matter what you do, you're not going to run out of money between now and next year, right? So the risk in financial planning is, what if you live much longer than you expect? So my grandmother died like 3 years ago. She was 109, lived way longer than you expect. And that's the risk. And you know what? There's a reasonable chance that can happen. Life expectancies are getting longer and longer all the time, with new discoveries in healthcare and everything. So, and other reasons. So we have to accept that might be an issue. And the last thing you want to be is, you're 90 years old and you're out of money. Now what? Right? Because you're not going back to work at that point. So that's why this needs to be important. So now, so the average life expectancy today at birth is 83. Like, you probably used to see numbers of 74 for men and 77 for women or something like that. That was 30 years ago. It's been steadily rising, and now from birth in Canada, the average, half the people make it to 83. So in the year 2000 it was 79. So see, it's up 4 years just in the last 20 years. So, and in 2100, the projection is that it'll be 92. It'll be much longer. So now the average life expectancy from age 65, so let's say that you make it to 65, you're expected to live even longer, age 84. And so most of our clients are couples, and so the question is, if you're a couple, you want to know that your money doesn't run out as long as either one of you is alive. So it's when is the last survivor going to be around, and you want to make sure that your money lasts at least as long as either one of you is around. So if you're a couple with average health, age 65, you have a 50% chance that one of you makes it to 94, a 25% chance that one of you makes it to 98, and a 10% chance that one of you makes it to 101. Okay, so that's why that's the biggest risk in a retirement plan is outliving your money. That's what the whole plan is about, making sure that you are confident you will never run out. You've set your lifestyle that you can live on, and you know you can live on that forever. So no matter how long you live. So for when we do our planning, we always use age 100. Now, surprisingly, using age 100 versus 90 or 85 makes less difference than you think, but it's still a really important piece of a financial plan. So, now, a lot of plans just automatically assume that age 75 or 80, you're going to spend less. And some studies, they're going to spend 25% less when you turn 75. And they say, well, you're healthy now, and then you travel a lot when you're between 60 and 75. And after that, you're going to not travel much. And, a fair number of seniors do that. But I think the main reason for that often is money. They haven't planned for enough money, and they're running out of money, and that's why they have to do it. Now, it could be health related, but from our experience, people that have health and money travel just as much at 80 and 85 as they did at 65. It might be less active. There might be more luxury type travel, but they're still traveling. They still want to be able to travel just as much at that point. So travel is one big piece of it. I give an example of that. We had a friend that actually won a $30,000 cruise. It was a river cruise. It was cost $30,000, and so I said, "Wow, this is really cool to be on this really great luxury cruise." And then we talked to him afterwards. He says, "You know what? That was the most boring damn cruise ever. I couldn't wait for it to end." And what happened was, he says, almost everybody on the ship was over 80. And, at 9 o'clock, everything was closed down and all the lights were out. And it's these luxury cruises are often designed specifically for people over 80. So, don't assume that. What's much more effective is to assume that the lifestyle that you have, that you set your own lifestyle that you want to have when you retire. And it makes a huge difference to have a confidence to know I can have that lifestyle plus rising by inflation for as long as I live. And when you can do that, that's what really gives you confidence in your lifestyle. So, because the thing is that it's actually super hard to reduce your lifestyle. So you're living in a certain way, and now you're going to start cutting back. You're going to travel less and do less entertainment and stay home more. And, so if you don't plan for it, you're going to be forced to do that. So it's when we do a plan, remember, a financial plan is your plan. We'll put any reasonable assumption that you want, we'll put in it. However, generally, the best thing to do is plan for the lifestyle you want as long as you live. So now, inflation being too low, we've seen lots of financial plans in around 2, and even the Financial Planner Standards Council recommends 2.1, which to me is just too low, because it's been almost always higher than that over periods of time. So now the Bank of Canada targets inflation to be between 1 and 3, and that's basically their only thing that they do. So there's a reasonable confidence that it should be between 1 and 3. Okay, but that difference actually is huge difference on a financial plan. I'll show you in a minute how much difference that makes. So now, the last inflation was much higher for most of the last century, but from 1992 up until 2019, so it was 2.25 was the rate of return. Okay, it was, the inflation rate. That was the average inflation rate. So now that was the single lowest period we've had in history. So much of the time in history, what we had is you have periods where it's fairly low. Actually, we've never been this low for a long time, but except in the Great Depression. But then you get periods where it's really high, and those will bring the average up a lot. So 2022, like last year, inflation was 8%, right? Back in 1980, it was 15%. So we had a period from 1975 to 82 where inflation was over 10% for 8 years. And inflation is the single biggest risk to a financial plan. It's massive. So, and that's why it's so very important that the Bank of Canada leave interest rates as high as possible and as long as necessary to get inflation all the way back down to 2, or at least between 2 and 3. So it's got to be able to do that. So now, many retirement plans use 2, but I think it's too low an example. And then I'll show you the difference, because if you're getting 2% inflation, so that simple plan that I showed you a minute ago. So a couple would need to invest 1350 per month with 2% inflation, and 3% inflation is 2650. So it's twice as much you need to invest. So if you get this assumption wrong, you could be way off in your financial plan, and that's why it's important to have a bit of margin of safety. Like the lowest long period we've had ever in history was 2.25. So we need to go higher than that, and like right now it's much higher. So we suggest having 3% inflation. It's unlikely to be above that because the Bank of Canada is just going to force it down below 3. But there's a lot of reasons to believe that inflation going forward is going to be higher. We've got governments that just spending tons of money. The government debt is really high. So and that's constantly flooding the economy with money. So it's hard to believe that it's going to be it's going to be that low, but 3% I think is probably a reasonable number. So now I did this study about the 4% rule, how much you can withdraw in retirement. And interestingly is, out of the last 150 years, this taking 4% a year out of a 100% equity portfolio worked. I gave you a 30-year retirement 97% of the time. And there were 6 times in the last 150 years where it failed, and 5 of the 6 were inflation. Once because of a market crash in 1929. So my point is that inflation is a much bigger risk to your retirement plan than market crashes. Market crashes, it comes back. But inflation is compounding, right? You get 8% inflation last year. We're not going to get a -8 to offset it. No, that 8 is in there permanently. Now this year we get maybe 4, and that's on top of the 8, and it's on top of it. And that's a cost that you need to fund every year for the rest of your life. So it's inflation is the really big threat. So that's why it's really important not to be too low. We recommend using 3% on here. Now, old age security is kind of an interesting one. Is most plans assume old age security, and you get the maximum on it. So, but old age security, there's 2 main retirement plans, government plans in Canada: old age security and the Canada Pension Plan, OAS and CPP. But OAS is not like CPP. There's no big fund for it. It's like CPP. There's actually a big fund. We pay into it. Our employers pay into it, right? There is a huge pension portfolio, and it's tested by actuaries, and so it's basically for the most part should be able to be there. Old age security, though, there is no fund. It's just paid out of the government's annual tax collected. And once we project what's going to happen in the future, like we've got these soaring government debts, we've got all the baby boomers are about to retire, and so that means healthcare and pension costs going to be up. And so are we actually going to be able to fund all of this? And so now also OAS is not paid 100% to everybody. So right now it's clawed back if you make over about 87,000 a year. So you can actually lose all your higher income people in retirement don't actually get OAS. So now our government, so finances are in bad shape. Our debt to GDP is around 120% now. You may see a lot of news articles saying it's about 40%. Those are all false. Okay, those assume that the government seizes our CPP, but CPP is not the government's, it's ours. Okay, some countries in Europe claim GDP is like they used to claim the government pension as part of GDP. However, that was because it was basically entirely government bonds, so that the entire thing was owed by government. So they said we owe it to ourselves. But now the CPP is mostly invested in stocks, kind of all over the world. So it's not the government's. So the real number is 120. 40 is a fake number, and so you see how high debts are getting for the government. That's what you got to understand, that this isn't necessarily sustainable. So. All right, so now, and we also have annual deficits over 50 billion now that are out of control. So that's part of what kind of worries me about where are we going. Are we really confident that the government is going to be able to pay our benefits to us? So, and there's a trend to claw back everything more and more. There's a long list of government benefits that are clawed back, and the idea is why should we pay it to people that don't need it? And what I actually think is going to happen, and this is not immediately, but let's say 10, 20, 30 years from now, I think the government's going to have trouble paying all of this, especially when all the baby boomers are collecting it. And so I think that the clawback amount is going to be reduced. It's not going to be 87. They're going to start clawing it back at 40 or 50,000 or something. Like, so right now, if you get the full OAS if your taxable income is under 87,000. So for a couple, it could be 175,000. And people will say, well, why should we be paying this old age security to a couple who's retired living on 175,000 a year, and they're going to move it down? And that's why we don't have a lot of confidence that we're going to be able to get the full OAS there. So we generally assume no old age security. Surprisingly, that affects the plan less than you might think. But I think it's important not to assume that you're necessarily going to get full old age security there. So why are these bad assumptions used? You see, I think those are all really bad assumptions, and they're the ones that are most commonly used. Those 4 bad assumptions, they're most commonly used in most financial plans that we see. So now part of it is, it's a big part of it is, like most financial planners are just trying to get you as a client, and they don't want to they don't want to lose you as a client or get a complaint, so they tend to invest too conservatively. Right, so that's the underlying fault in most cases. So you sit down with an advisor, first thing to do is they're out with a risk tolerance questionnaire, you come out moderate, so they're recommending balanced investments, and then which have a rate of return long term of maybe 5% a year. Okay, so that's where you are. And the problem is you already cannot retire. Basically nobody can retire comfortably on a balanced portfolio. You need higher risk to be able to do it. So you're going to be, if you retire, if you have that kind of investments, it's going to be a very scaled down retirement. So, and the problem is now you've already got this low rate of return. So then all of a sudden you have to make a bunch of bad assumptions. Otherwise, there's no way the financial plan works. And I think that's what the underlying problem is with it. So this is what we call the nightmare. This is the nightmare. The worst possible scenario is what happens every day. You go to a bank or a typical financial planner, advisor, you don't get a retirement plan, they give you the risk tolerance questionnaire, you come out moderate, you got a balanced portfolio, and you're already screwed. So basically you cannot retire comfortably on a balanced portfolio. And the problem is, at that point, if you don't have a plan, you don't even know that you won't be able to retire comfortably. You've already been messed up, and you're already not going to make it, and you don't even know it yet. So that's why it's important to have a growth mindset and focus a bit on growth and long-term growth. So now you cannot retire comfortably on 5% per year return of a balanced portfolio. So a comfortable retirement requires a 7 to 8% year rate of return of an equity portfolio. So that's kind of what you get if you have an all equity portfolio or a high equity portfolio. And that kind of rate of return, when we do financial plans, like we try them with different rates of return. And I'll show you examples in a minute. You'll see what happens. Unless you have a reasonable rate of return, there's no way you can make this plan work and to retire the way that you want to. So now the other thing is, it's even important after you retire, because if you take a typical plan where let's say you save up from age 25 to 65 for 40 years, and then you retired from 65 to 95 for 30 years, and you look at that overall amount, and you take the money that you lived on when you retire, and here's the shocking number: between 70 and 80% of your retirement income is growth of your investments after you retire. So that you may find shocking. So it's you think you need a few million when you retire, but most of what you're living off of is actually growth after you retire. So even after you retire, you can't get too conservative. So now I'm going to show you what these financial plans look like. Okay, so there's the risk of having too conservative of investments. So here's some example of financial plan results. So, and I'm going to show you a few different examples. So, and I'll do this very quickly, just because I'm trying to make one point. So this is a single person making 50,000 a year, want to retire at 40,000 a year, like 35 now, retire at 65. Okay, we're going to assume 3% inflation, maximum government benefits. So assume they do get maximum CPP and OAS. So now to get there with a 5%, with a balanced portfolio, like most advisors would say you should have, you need 1,150,000 investments to retire. To retire on that 40,000 a year before tax. All right, and to do that, you need to invest 17,000 a year. That's 34% of your gross income. So you make 50, 100,000 a year before tax, you have to invest 17,000 of it. Okay. Now, if all you do is invest a bit more aggressively, invest in equities, you get 8% a year, then you only need 775,000. You only need to put in 6,500 a year. That's 13% of your gross income. Okay, not a low number, but that's, certainly in the achievable range. So just that difference, because you decided to invest balanced instead of equity and get a 3% low rate of return, you have to invest 10,500 per year for 30 years to make up for it. That's shocking. Now, the same thing happens in other cases. So this is the same thing a couple. So they each make 50,000. They want to, that's 100,000 total. They want to retire around 40,000 each. That's 80,000. So again, they need to invest 34% of their gross income to make it with 5%, but only 13% with 8%. So with an 8% rate of return. So now let's take a moderate one. So is a person earning 100,000, want to retire at 65 on 75,000 a year. They need 3.375 million. So they have to invest 50,000 a year. Now that's nuts. You only make 100,000 a year before tax. So which means you're bringing home only about 75,000, and you need to invest 50,000 of it. That's just totally nuts. That's just not impossible. That's impossible. But if all you do is you go to an 8% return, then you only need 2,275,000, 20% of your gross income. So, that's basically your RSP room and a little bit more, so 30,000 is the difference. 30,000 a year that you have to invest. Okay, so here again, so this is a couple, they each earn 100,000, so 200,000 total. They want to retire on 75,000 each, it's 150,000 total. All right, so with 5% rate of return, they need 6.8 million. They have to invest 50% of their income. But with the 8% rate of return, they need 4.6 million. They'll have to put in 20% of their income. 20% is, again, this is all achievable number. All right. And this is an upscale one. So let's say you make 500,000 a year. A doctor want to retire on 300,000 a year in 30 years. With a balanced portfolio, you need 18 million. And that's to invest, you have to put in 53% of your gross income for 30 years. But as soon as you go to 8%, it's only 21% of your gross income. So it's massively. So this is my point is as soon as you go in and you've done the risk tolerance and they've said you've got, you're a moderate investor, you need a balanced portfolio, you're already screwed. You already can't make it. So the bottom line with if you invest in a balanced portfolio, to have a comfortable retirement, you need to invest between 35 and 50% of your before tax income for 30 years. That's impossible. But the only change you made is going to an equity portfolio. I'll talk a bit about how to learn to be able to do that. But then you only have to put in between 13 and 20% of your income. And, it's maximize your RSP, but it puts a bit of TFSA. So, it's entirely reasonable. So here's a simple plan with good assumptions. Here's what it looks like. So you have the option to retire. So this is financial freedom. You have the option to retire in 30 years on 100,000 a year. You have 100,000 now investments. You need to invest 2,500 a month plus tax refunds. This is the same simple plan that I showed before. Okay. And with good assumptions, 8% per year return before retirement, that's all equities basically, and then 7% afterwards. After you retire, life expectancy to age 100. So your lifestyle stays constant, rising by inflation to 100, 3% inflation, no OAS, it's just a bonus. By putting in this 2,500 a month, investing your tax refunds, you're 8% ahead of your goal. Okay. Now let's say all you go to is you hit the same people, and let's say they get an advisor that gives them bad assumptions. So the first thing is, here's your risk tolerance questionnaire, your moderate risk, right? So you need a balanced portfolio, 5% rate of return. Now, instead of being 8% ahead, you're now 56% behind your goal. You're way behind. So, geez, how are we going to do that? Okay, so let's make some bad assumptions and just kind of, make it look like the plan works. So first of all, let's cut life expectancy. Okay, you run out of money at 85, and then say, you're 75, you're going to spend 75% less, 25% less, which basically means no traveling, no entertainment, right? If you look at what 25% of your income is. 2% inflation, so we're going to make sure that's low. It's most likely going to be higher. Almost for sure will be higher over the next 30 years, but that's the number they put in. They assume you get full OS, even though you may not, and the government may not be able to afford it. So now you show your 18% of your 18% ahead of your goals. So see, magically you made the plan work. But the problem is you think you're okay, but you're not. So retirement is going to be disappointing, right? Because look at this. This is what you planned for. Inflation is higher, so most likely you can't actually live on the lifestyle you want. At age 75, you have to do massive cutbacks in your lifestyle. And then at age 85, you're out of money. So that's a really disappointing retirement. And that's what they stuck you with. And they did that only because they went to a balanced portfolio and they messed you up. And now they have to dummy up the plan with bad assumptions just to make it look like it works. So, all right. So that's the problem with bad assumptions. Now let's talk about a generic plan versus custom plan. And, a generic plan, the most common way that I've seen, generic plans is when it's not you, they just show you some numbers, right? So, and the most common that I've seen is you see this a lot at a bank. They just go in there, they ask what you make now. They just assume that, oh, when you retire, you need 70% or 75%. They just assume a number. That's how much you need, right? So, and the problem with that is it's not realistic. So we've written over 1,000 financial plans for actual people. We look at what's the lifestyle that they want to have, and we have done plans where they can retire, where they want to retire on 45% of what they're making now. Actually, lately, even less than that. And we've done some that are 200 or more than 200% of your income. So it's entirely what you choose. And it's also a question of like, what is your income now? Is this, if you're early in your career, you can, in your professional, you can expect maybe you'll make much more later on. So you want much more of, a much higher percent of today's number. Some people are really frugal. They make, a lot of money now, and, they're going to retire frugally. And so they don't need nearly as much as they're making now. So this is all needs to be done custom. So assuming 70% is just like, it's just wrong. Like, because if you take all financial plans we've ever done, and they're all custom, right? What they're making now and what the lifestyle that they really want to have. And if you average them out, it probably is 70 or 75% is probably the average. However, there's such a variation. It's very rarely that it's actually, actually in that number. So now for a custom plan, what you do is you need to go through your cash flow today. So you know exactly what you spend. Here's the steps. And then you think about what's the desired lifestyle you want to have? Like, where are you going to live? How much travel you want to do? What are you going to be doing with your time? What entertainment you want? You just think about it. And then what you do is you adjust your cash flow to a projection for what you would like it to be. Okay. So then you work out a very custom, that's the lifestyle. When I retire, that's the lifestyle I want to have. Let's just figure it all out. And that's before tax. And you, of course, have to figure out how much that's after tax. You figure out how much money before tax you need to be able to get there. And then, of course, you increase it by inflation based on how many years till you retire. And that's how you figure it out. So you got an actual number. This is how you personally, or you and your spouse, want to retire. So that's the plan that you need. It's a custom plan. It's not just, oh, you need 70%. Who knows? Maybe that's right. Maybe it's wrong. So, and the importance about it is if it's just 70%. So when I was starting out my career years ago, I was doing some basic plans. I didn't have good financial planning software then. And I was just assuming numbers like 70%. And what I found is people actually didn't necessarily follow the goal. Like they kind of felt I just imposed a number on them. They didn't necessarily believe that number was real. Right. So they didn't follow it. And so that's why when you do a custom plan, you realize that's the lifestyle I want to have. Now you're just much more likely to do it. So that's the lifestyle I want to have. So to do it, then you'd see this is what I have to do. I have to invest X amount every year, and this is what I have to be able to do to achieve it. And you're actually going to follow the plan. So that's why having confidence in whatever plan you have is just so important, because otherwise, life comes along and I'd rather take some big trips and you just don't invest for a number of years. Like you need to be able to have confidence in your plan and really want to do it. So it must be your goal for you to have confidence. The other thing we often see is what I call the one option plan. And this is what a lot of fee-only financial planners do. So the process here is they sit down with you for, maybe about an hour and ask you a bunch of questions. You leave. And then a few weeks later, they send you a plan. It used to be they mail it out. Now may often email it too, but you just get the plan a few weeks later and there's the plan. So, and the problem is usually the plan only includes one retirement scenario, and it probably shows you're short of your goal and what you'd have to do to, a few possible ways that you could make it up. But if that option is not what you want to do, then what? And that's what we've seen that a lot. Like we've had a fair number of people that paid for a fee-only financial planner for a financial plan. They got their plan a few weeks later. They look at it. Well, that's not actually what I want to do, and now they still don't know what they should be doing with their life, or they still don't know if they're going to be able to retire the way they want, and so they're stuck. And they think, well, I got this plan, but it didn't answer my real questions. So that's what I call the one option plan. And to me, that's just scenario one. That's just the first step. What happens is the financial planner stopped at the first step, but they need to go on from there. So now an interactive financial plan is what actually gives you the confidence that you need, and that's following the rest of the process. So we've got like really flexible software where we can change scenarios within a few seconds. We can show you what happens. What if you do something different? So first of all, what is an interactive financial plan? So you work through many scenarios until you find the exact one that you want. It's not that, here's your one plan. No, so let's start and let's work through a whole bunch of scenarios until we get something that you want to do. So it's the retirement you want, plus it's reasonably doable for you. So there's a trade-off between how much you invest now versus how comfortably you retire not later. And when you see the actual numbers, pardon me, when you see the actual numbers, then you can make that as an informed decision. If I put in an extra so much a year investment now for the next number of years till I retire, then I can get more travel. So now for me, is that a lifestyle change that is worth it for me or not? And it may or not be. But then when you see the numbers, you can make that choice, based on the real life choice. You're planning out your life. So, and then what we can do is we can look at all kinds of different scenarios. You can ask your own what ifs. I'm going to show you that in a second. And then you decide on your plan. So that's what an interactive financial plan is. And your plan gives you confidence. You'll be able to retire with the lifestyle you want. You know what to do to achieve it. So now here's the process. So first of all, the process for setting up an interactive financial plan. So first of all, you need a custom retirement goal. So remember, you take your current cash flow, you think about retirement you want, you put the numbers on and how much money would I need today for the lifestyle that I really want to have, work out the before tax number, and then the future inflation number. You get the actual number. Okay. Then scenario one is, which is what mostly get from a fee-only planner, is you just you're taking the custom goal, what you save now, and see where you are. And most people are, in scenario one are way behind, because you're not saving enough today for what you need down the road. So what people find when they need a financial plan, there's good news and bad news. So the good news is, or the bad news is, you actually need a lot more money to retire comfortably than you probably think. The good news is, if you're investing, if you're starting reasonably young, investing for 20 or 30 years, you actually need to put in less than you might think to be able to get there. So that's it's the compounding. So that's the good news. So, but anyway, so this is the first scenario. Your custom goal, what you save now, you're behind. Okay. Then we by looking at your scenario, we would say, okay, so here's our recommendations of how you can optimize everything. How much RSP versus TFSA? What cash flow do you have? What do we do with the tax refunds? What strategies should we do? So we look at our recommendations. We can add them one by one and see how to a plan. So this is, if you do this, then this is where you are. If you do this, this is where you are. So we can show scenario two is, these are all our recommendations about what you want to, about how to optimize everything. And now you may or may not be on track. So, and then after that, it's, you look at, it's your plan, you decide what you want to do. So you can change anything that you want. So you ask all your questions. So what if you work a bit longer? So let's say I work 2 more years. How much more retirement income will I have if I do that? So what if I save another 5 or 10,000 a year? How much more retirement income will I have if I do that? And then, so when you ask these questions, then you can make real life choices for yourself. So, right. So, and what if I retire on a little bit less, So if, what happens so I'm behind a bit. So what if I just retire a little bit less? So, how much would I have to cut down my retirement to be on track and do not do anything different than I'm doing today? Right. So what if I invest for more long-term growth, get a bit higher rate of return? How much, then what does it make? What if I do we have some very effective strategy like the Smith maneuver and RSP top-ups. And so what if I do some of these a strategy like this, how much difference does that make? So, so the question often is, we get a lot of people. So it used to be most people retired in the 60s or the earliest, the late 50s. Now with this whole FIRE community, financial independence, retire early, we're helping people retire in their 50s and sometimes 40s. So we often get the question, so what would I have to do to retire at age 50 or 55 or 50? And we can show you, okay, well, to be able to do that, here's what you have to do. And you can decide whether or not that makes it, whether or not you want to do that. But when you see the numbers, you can choose. So, and also, how can you have 30,000 or 40,000 for vacations? We've had a fair number of people say, you know what, when I retire, I want to do a lot of traveling. I want to, be overseas much of the time. So I want to have a really good vacation budget. So what do I have to do to be able to get there? So you can get to ask all your what ifs. We can show you all these different scenarios and you play it out. And this is the horrible thing about just having a one option. That's your plan, but so let's talk about all the different things that you're thinking you might want to do. And then we'll show you what each one of them looks like in reality, what you have to do to get there. And then you finally decide, okay, that's the plan I want. I can retire that way. It's reasonably doable for me. I understand what I have to do to get there. And we got a plan that is your plan that you want to do. And that's what an interactive financial plan gives you. It gives you confidence that that you're going to be able to live the way that you want in the future, and that you know exactly what it is you have to do to be able to get there. So now part of all this is you probably need a bit higher risk tolerance. But you know what? Risk tolerance is a learned skill. So the problem is the average person just, fills out the risk tolerance sheet and says they're moderate, then they get 5% rate of return. Well, you can't just put 8% rate of return and say, oh, it works with an 8% rate of return. You can't just put it on there because that's not the rate of return that you how are you going to be able to get there? You don't want to do it unless you can actually achieve it. Okay. So but what you can do is, risk tolerance is not innately, when you see the risk tolerance questionnaires, you think risk tolerance is what you are, but it's not. Risk tolerance is a learned skill. Just like I used to be scared of flying and now I'm not. I learned to get comfortable with it. Investing is the same thing. So, and most people, once they've been invested for a while, and they see how stock markets go up and down, but they recover, you get comfortable with it. So it's experience, plus it's also education. So we spend some time showing people, this is what the stock market and the bond market actually look like. This is long-term returns, and this is risk. And, this is when it falls, this is how much it declines and how much it recovers. And so you want to see what it actually looks like. And once you see it, then you find, what, it's not that scary. I could see how it works. And you know what? The stock market does go up and down a lot short term, but it's actually very reliable as a very long-term thing. And that's why the stock market is the most effective place to invest for your retirement. And you can't have confidence that it'll work over time. So, like, for example, here is the longest study we've seen. This is from 1802 it's 220 years, and you see this is the trend line here for stocks, and notice how it's always been very close to the trend line. So that trend line is 6.8% real, meaning 6.8% after inflation. That's the long-term rate of return of stocks. And it varies. This is kind of usually around 7% above inflation has been the long-term rate of return. And look, even through everything that's happened in the last 200 years, it's always been close to that. And bonds have done, okay, they've had periods where they did well. In fact, the last 40 years, bonds actually did pretty well, like not that much less than stocks. But the last 40 years were a super weird, period. The 40 years before that were a disaster, where bonds lost half of their value. So there's a perception that bonds are less risky. And that is true short term, but it's not true long term. So here's the actual standard deviation is it's a statistical measure of uncertainty, and that's what we use in the investment industry to talk about the variability of returns. Okay, so this is the standard deviation after inflation over different time periods. Okay, and the problem with the financial planning industry and the investment industry is it's all short-term thinking. So this is this is here a visual picture of risk meaning uncertainty of return. Okay, so you see stocks, this is bonds, this is cash. So stocks are a lot more risky over 1 to 5 year periods. They're much riskier and more uncertain than bonds. But when you get to 20 years or more, 20 years, 30 years. And that's what a financial plan is, that long or much longer. Because remember, a financial plan is not just till you retire, it's all the way to, as long as you live, as long as you have most of your money invested. And when you get to 20 years or longer, stocks are actually more reliable than bonds after inflation. Like bonds really get killed by inflation sometimes, but stocks, they can go through bad periods, but they always come back eventually with some time. So that's why it's not so unrealistic to be 100% or, at least have 100% in equities, or at least have a high percentage of it. So this is, short-term thinking, and this is 1 year return of the S&P 500, 150 years, it's pretty well all over the map. 3/4 of the years are up, and there's lots, almost 4 out of 10 are gains over 20%, but there's lots of declines, and some reasonably big ones. So over a 1 year period, you can't really predict what the S&P or what the stock market's going to do. But see, this is 25-year periods. Look how consistent it is. And, if you look at, the modern stock market, way back here in the 1800s and early 1900s, it was almost entirely railroads and agricultural stocks. But, it's kind of the 1920s and 30s that we got into, much broader stock market, the modern stock market. And so from then on till now, the rate of return is, the worst rate of return has been here, which was 7.9, like 8% per year, is the worst 25-year return of the S&P 500 in the modern stock market. So that doesn't guarantee you that, but, and most likely we're going to make more than that. So that's why it's not a ridiculous number to use a number like 8% in a plan if you're going to be 100% equities. So, and you got to, so part of learning to have a higher risk tolerance is this. So this is the stock market. See, so it has declines and big gains, and so on average the market's up 130% over 54 months, right? So that's a little under 5 years, and then it falls 28% over 9 months. The declines are usually less than a year, and then and then you're back up again. But the declines are not insignificant. They're big. They're 20, 30, occasionally 40%. So that's, it's a lot. If you, especially once you've built up your portfolio for, you have $1 million invested, it falls 30%. That's 300,000 you're down. But you know what? You're not really down it because you just wait a little bit and it comes back, right? So that's what has always happened in the past, and you learn to get confident in it. And this is what it looks like then over time, so that's the same data, but now you see that even though these yellow periods where it's going down, if you just stay invested, it just very reliably goes up over a longer period of time. So, and that's why, deciding, getting comfortable with a bit higher risk tolerance, it has to be real. You have to be able to stay invested when it declines. So, all right, but getting comfortable with a higher risk tolerance is actually worthwhile for you. It's hugely worthwhile for you in a plan. You saw the difference between a 5% return and an 8% rate of return in a plan. It's, remember, if you have 5% rate of return, you need to put in between 35 and 50% of your gross income to retire comfortably, but it's only 13 to 20% if you can invest with equity. So it's really important to be able to think this part through. All right, so not just, fill out a risk tolerance questionnaire and that's it. So this is what we talked about here. What we just learned is about why most financial plans fail. Is how do we know most financial plans fail? What exactly is a retirement plan? We talked about common bad assumptions that they're used in most financial plans we see out there, why these bad assumptions are used. We looked at generic plans versus custom plans, the importance of confidence in your plan. We talked about the one option plan that a lot of fee-only planners do, and how an interactive financial plan gives you confidence in your future. So, all right. Well, thanks a lot for listening. My name again is Ed Rempel. My blog is Unconventional Wisdom, and it's the #1 blog in Canada for a financial planner. It's at www.edrempel.com. Also have a YouTube channel that I've been building up. If you're watching this on a video, it's there. And I'm about to launch a podcast, so stay tuned for the next few weeks. It'll be out. This was just by request. A lot of people kept asking me for it, so we're coming out with a podcast. And so, if you go to my blog, you can subscribe, and then what'll happen is you'll get all my articles, videos, and podcasts directly to email to you once a week. We don't market to anybody else, but you'll once a week, usually every Thursday, you'll get a new video or article or podcast. And if you go to my blog, just hit the contact button and you can ask for a free 30-minute consultation. If you're interested in working with us, a 30-minute consultation, you just talk to one of our financial planners and just, have a discussion about what you're looking for. And we'll talk about what we do and we'll see whether or not we're a fit to work together. So also please like and subscribe to my blog and YouTube channel. And thanks again for listening. We will talk to you next week.